Since the world has existed, people have carried within themselves an uneasiness, an invisible need, a quiet call whispering deep in the soul. There is something more, something beyond matter, something we need to achieve. In trying to answer this call, many paths have been chosen. Some sought it in art, meditation, dances, religion, others in the absolute silence of contemplation. But there are also those who sought something more in a glass. What if I tell you that this search never concerned alcohol? What if I tell you that the real reason millions of people turn to this substance goes far beyond pleasure, escape, or social customs? Carl Jung, one of the greatest thinkers of modern psychology, made a discovery that few know about, which remained hidden for centuries. He realized that behind the obvious need to drink hides a disguised spiritual search, something that even avid drinkers do not fully understand. What Jung discovered was not just a psychological fact. It was something that completely changed our view of alcohol, something so profound that if you understand it, you will never see this substance in the same way again. But before I reveal this secret, I need to ask you a question. Have you ever felt that there is something beyond what your eyes can see? Have you ever had the feeling that the world around you consists not only of matter, but also of energy, consciousness, something that traditional science cannot fully explain? If the answer is positive, then what you are about to discover may change not only your attitude towards alcohol, but also your attitude towards yourself. Alcohol has always been present in human history. It is a symbol of triumph and shame, union and destruction, pleasure and regret. Since ancient times, it has been used in sacred rituals, in offerings to the gods, in ceremonies of passage, but it has also been responsible for tragedies, for destroyed families, for lives ruined by a drunken night. How can something so small, a simple liquid, carry so much power? What is so special about alcohol? What attracts millions of people around the world to it like an invisible magnet? The answer to this question lies not only in the chemistry of ethanol. It is something much deeper, something that Carl Jung understood as few others did. He realized that it is not simply physiological or social, it is spiritual, and this simple realization changes everything. In a famous letter sent to Bill Wilson, the founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, Jung revealed a detail that few had noticed. He explained that in Latin, the word alcohol comes from spiritus. Pay attention to this. Spiritus is used both to refer to alcoholic beverages and to refer to the divine spirit. He noted something striking. Alcoholics were not simply seeking pleasure or temporary relief. Deep down, they were seeking a transcendent experience, a connection with something greater, a reunion with the divine. But alcohol does not bring such a connection. It creates an instant illusion, a fleeting glimpse of something that will never materialize, and that is the great trap. Because whoever seeks true transcendence in alcohol will never find it. On the contrary, the deeper you delve into this path, the further you become from it. But now an even more intriguing question arises. If the desire for alcohol is, in reality, a striving for transcendence, then what are we really seeking? And above all, why are we seeking it in the wrong place? Since ancient times, people have always needed to change their state of consciousness. This is an undeniable truth, but there are two ways to do this. One is the path of ascent, where people seek connection with the divine through meditation, self-knowledge, contemplation, art, and genuine spirituality. The other is the path of illusion, where one resorts to external substances that momentarily change perception but never give a true experience. Alcohol in this context acts as a distorted reflection of what we are really seeking. It promises relaxation, but causes anxiety. It promises happiness, but generates regret. It promises connection, but isolates, and that is why many get stuck in this, because instead of finding what they really need, they end up trapped in a cycle of unfulfilled promises. But what if there was another path? What if, instead of seeking connection with something greater through alcohol, there was a real way to achieve this state without having to make mistakes in the process? This is the question that drives the interchange. If alcohol had never existed, If from the very beginning of humanity people had not had this substance at hand, how would they find peace? How would they cope with the pain of existence? What if I tell you that this answer has always been available, but over time has been forgotten, because the truth is that we do not need alcohol to feel complete, but people feel that they need it. The answer to this question lies in what we are going to explore: the real influence of alcohol on the energetic field of a person, the fragmentation of the soul, and why so many spiritual traditions over the centuries have warned about this danger. Imagine the following scenario. It is an ordinary night. The clock shows 22:47. In a home, someone, glass in hand, half full, reflects the dim light of a lamp. The first dose was for relaxation, the second to relieve tension, the third was no longer a conscious choice. This someone could be anyone. It could be a teacher who spent the day battling fatigue and life's disappointments. It could be a wife who is always there for everyone except herself. It could be a man who no longer recognizes himself when he looks in the mirror. The alcohol flows down the throat, and for a moment, everything seems easier. Anxieties subside. Fears calm down. The mind quiets. But what exactly is happening at that moment? What is behind this feeling of relief that so many people seek? And most importantly, what are the consequences? Carl Jung understood what many ignore. He understood that alcohol does not simply change the chemical composition of the body, it changes the energy of a person. It does not simply relax us, it fragments us. And that is the key to understanding why so many people get stuck in this cycle without even realizing it. Ancient civilizations warned about this, but these warnings were not only about the physical or social harm. What the ancients knew, and what modern science is still trying to understand, is that a human being is not just flesh and bones. We are made of something more. Our consciousness is not limited to the brain. Our presence in the world is not limited to what we can see or touch. And alcohol directly interferes with this subtle field. Imagine that your energy is like an invisible shield. This shield protects your conscience, your intuition, your clarity of mind. It keeps you in harmony with your own essence. Now think about what happens when someone drinks alcohol. Gradually, this shield begins to weaken. Small cracks appear, and through these cracks, something slips away. Many people describe a feeling of emptiness after consuming alcohol, as if a part of them has been taken away, as if, instead of replenishing their energy, they have lost something important. What if this was not just a subjective feeling? What if, in reality, alcohol opens a portal that separates us from our own soul? Have you ever seen someone completely change their personality after consuming alcohol? Maybe a calm person who becomes aggressive, maybe someone melancholic who suddenly starts laughing uncontrollably. Maybe someone who has always been rational and focused, but under the influence of alcohol says or does things it would never do sober. And the next morning, the classic phrase, "I don't know what happened. I was not myself." But this phrase was truer than we imagine. Many spiritual traditions teach that a person consists of several layers. We are not just a physical body. We are also an energetic body, an emotional body, an astral body. And when we drink alcohol, these layers shift. Consciousness loses control, intuition shuts off, discernment dissolves. Now there are energies that previously did not have access. That is why in many cultures, alcohol is called a spirit, not because it brings enlightenment, but because it opens the doors to forces that we often do not fully understand. What if this was the real reason why many people feel so empty the next day? Carl Jung discovered that the greatest danger of alcohol lies not only in what it does to the body, but in what it does to the soul. And that brings us to an essential question: if alcohol takes us away from our true essence, how can we reconnect with it? Now, I want you to think about something. If there was no alcohol in the world, how would you find relief? What would help you feel at peace without needing to anesthetize yourself? What if, instead of seeking refuge in something that disconnects you, you could find something that truly strengthens you? Carl Jung believed that true healing lies not in suppression, but in transformation. The problem was never about alcohol. The problem was always what we are trying to forget through it. What if there was a lost connection, a simple but extremely effective way to restore clarity of mind and inner peace without resorting to alcohol or other external distractions? That is precisely what the Jung 5-minute method is, for inner peace and clarity of mind. If the ideas that we have explored so far resonate with you, it may become the missing element that helps you not only understand all of this intellectually, but also apply it in practice in your daily life. The link to access the ebook is in the pinned comment to this video. Now, before we go further, we need to examine something even deeper, because if alcohol takes us away from our true essence, then what connects us to it? And it is precisely this question that we will now answer. What you are about to hear may forever change your relationship with alcohol, and perhaps, for a moment, your instinct will be to reject this information, because when a very deep truth touches something that we have always taken for granted, our mind tries to protect itself. But if you have come this far, something inside you is already seeking something more. So I ask you, are you really ready to see? If so, let's continue. Imagine an ancient temple, built thousands of years ago. Inside, priests and sages gathered for sacred rituals. Every movement was precise, every word had meaning, and in none of these rituals was alcohol present. This is not accidental. Ancestral cultures possessed knowledge that has somehow been lost over the centuries, knowledge that has been hidden from us, or even worse, knowledge that we prefer to ignore. Although in some traditions, entheogenic plants were used to achieve heightened states of consciousness, they were always treated with special care. In India, for example, the Vedic texts speak of soma, a sacred drink used to expand perception, but this drink was not alcohol. In Buddhism, one of the 5 basic precepts clearly states, avoid substances that cloud the mind. It is seen as a trick of dark forces, something that spiritually weakens a person. Now, think with me. Why did so many cultures come to the same conclusion about this substance? What did they know that we have forgotten? Alcohol is the only socially acceptable drug that, although it destroys lives, is widely promoted. Think about how many times you have heard phrases like, drink to relax, have a drink to forget your problems, no one has fun without alcohol. Now the question is, who benefits when all of society believes it needs alcohol to cope with its emotions? People who use alcohol to alleviate pain are more emotionally fragile. More fragile people are easier to manipulate, easier to sell to, easier to convince if someone is confused, easier to control. A society that believes it needs constant anesthesia to continue living. And what if you never had contact with alcohol? If it simply did not exist in your life, how would you cope with your emotions? This is an important question, and I want you to reflect and write in the comments. If alcohol had never existed, how would you live? Because the answer may reveal something much deeper than you imagine. Most people think of alcohol as a simple chemical substance, but it is much more than that. It weakens conscience, it reduces your life energy, it fragments your perception, it disconnects you from yourself. And the most dangerous thing is that it does not happen immediately. The effect is not only noticeable when you are drunk, it accumulates day after day. With each dose, a part of you dissolves a little more. With each sip, your intuition becomes a little weaker. With each hangover, part of your clarity disappears, until one day you wake up and realize that you no longer feel that connection with life. That what was once clear becomes confused, and what once excited you now seems distant. But what if this is not just a side effect of alcohol? What if this was its real purpose? Alcohol sells an illusion, a promise of freedom, relief, euphoria. But think about the times you have drunk. Was it really freedom, or was it just a temporary painkiller for something that deep down still existed? Alcohol does not solve anything, it simply postpones it. The problem that you tried to forget with a drink still exists when the effect passes. The pain you wanted to drown is still waiting for you the next day. And what is worse, now you will have to deal not only with the initial pain, but also with the weight of a physical, emotional, and spiritual hangover. Now, I want you to write in the comments what alcohol has made you postpone in your life. Be honest, your answer may help more people than you think, because this is a truth that no one tells us. Everything we once avoid meeting returns to find us, and the longer we postpone it, the heavier it becomes. Now that you know all of this, I need to ask you a question, and it is possibly the most important question you had ever heard. What are you really looking for when you drink? Because it is not about alcohol, it never was. It is about something deeper, something that perhaps you have not even put into words yet. Perhaps it is a need to feel more alive. Perhaps it is a desire to alleviate a burden that you do not know how to carry. Perhaps it is an emptiness that you are trying to fill, but that never becomes complete. Whatever it is, I want you to think about it, and if you feel you can, share it in the comments. because there is much more than alcohol. Next, let's talk about what can really fill that space, because this may be information that completely changes your outlook on life. There is something that no one will tell you about alcohol. It is not written on bottle labels, it is not in advertising campaigns, it is not mentioned, and it is certainly not a topic that people like to discuss between toasts. But what you are about to discover may completely change your perception of this substance, because the true impact of alcohol is not just in the liver, the mind, or behavior. It is in your intuition. It is how you connect or disconnect, be it silently destroying the most important part of who you are. But before we go deeper, stop and think for a moment. Have you ever had the feeling that you knew that something was going to happen even before it happened? That intuition that warned you about the wrong path, that inexplicable feeling that, if ignored, ultimately led you to a bad situation? Now ask yourself, what happens to that intuition when you drink? A study by the University of Sussex revealed something intriguing. When a person consumes alcohol, the activity of the frontal cortex decreases dramatically. It is the part of the brain responsible for conscious decision-making, self-control, and the ability to perceive subtle patterns. But there is something even more impressive. MRI scans showed that under the influence of alcohol, activity in this area not only decreases, it literally fragments. In other words, alcohol reduces your ability to make decisions and separates you from your own perception of reality. Now think about how many times in human history people have made decisions that forever changed their lives while under the influence of alcohol. How many words should never have been spoken? How many actions should never have been committed? How many lives have taken an unexpected turn due to a single moment of disconnection? Alcohol does not simply erase memories, it turns off the connection with your own inner compass. And that brings us to a question that few ask: if alcohol turns off our consciousness, who or what takes control? In the Middle Ages, there was a concept called temporary possession, the idea that some people, losing control of themselves, could be influenced by external forces. We are not talking about something supernatural in the sense of horror movies, but something much more real. Think about those times when a person drinks and becomes completely different, a calm person who becomes aggressive, a serene woman who suddenly says things she would never say, a reasonable person making completely irresponsible decisions. And the worst thing is that many of them remember nothing the next day. Why is that? What happens in that space between conscious self and complete disconnection? Many spiritual traditions teach that when a person loses clarity of mind, their energy weakens and becomes vulnerable to external influences. This may mean thoughts that are not really yours, behavior that has destructive impulses arising from nowhere. And the next day the only explanation we have is, I don't know what happened. But what if something is happening behind the scenes of consciousness? What if, instead of simply losing control, something took over that space? Now let's get to the hangover. Many think that it is just a chemical effect of dehydration or alcohol intoxication. But what if the hangover was something more? Have you noticed that many people feel not just headaches and physical fatigue? They feel sadness, inexplicable melancholy, a feeling that something is missing, and sometimes it takes days or even weeks to recover. In Jungian psychology, there is a concept called soul loss. This refers to times when a person experiences trauma or difficult experiences and feels that they have lost a part of themselves. What if every time a person drank, a small part of them was pushed a little further away? What if over time, this accumulated disconnection became the cause of that chronic emptiness that many people report? If this is true, then a fundamental question arises: how can we recover what has been lost? Now, I want you to imagine something. Think about all the important decisions in your life, the moments when you had to choose a path, the moments when your intuition warned you about something, the moments when clarity of mind was necessary to avoid a bad situation. Imagine that in all these situations you were under the influence of alcohol. Would you have made the same decision? Would you have listened to your intuition? Or would you have ignored the signs? Now think about this. How many bad decisions in your life have been made under the influence of alcohol? How many words said? How many regrets? How many moments could have been different? If you feel that you have gone through something similar, write in the comments what alcohol has made you lose, because admitting it is not a weakness, it is the first step to recovering what is really important. And the great truth is that alcohol has never been your friend. It has never made you stronger. It has never freed you. It has never given you anything that you did not already have inside. It just makes you forget for a few hours what was once natural, the connection with your own essence, and that brings us to the most important moment of this series. Now that we know what alcohol takes away from you, the big question is, what can you recover? And this is what we are going to explore, because if there is a way back, it needs to be found now. There is a moment in life when we realize something that we have avoided seeing for years, something that we try to ignore, justify, explain, but deep down it has always been there. That moment may come at a quiet dawn, when it is dark around but a storm is raging inside the mind. It may happen after a conversation in which someone tells us a truth that we did not want to hear. Or it may be a simple look in the mirror, when you notice that there is something in your face that is no longer there. I cannot exactly describe what it is, but that clarity that existed when we were younger, that sparkle in the eyes of someone who still saw life with energy, that ability to feel things strongly and genuinely, it has disappeared. What happened when we stopped being whole? Perhaps the answer lies in the details, in listening to noses louder than our own intuition, in moments when we exchange clarity for instant relief. Over the years, we have learned to silence our conscience, until one day it fell silent. But there is good news: if we lose something, it means that we once had it. And if we ever had it, it means that we can recover it. This leads to the last question of this journey. All our lives we have been conditioned to believe that alcohol is a solution, something to relieve stress, something to give up, something to socialize with, something to forget our problems. But if that were true, why do so many drinking people still carry the same anxieties? If alcohol really helped us, we should solve our problems, not just postpone them. The truth is that alcohol has never been the solution. It has always been a detour, a way to move away from what we really need to see. Because if we had to face our own pain face to face, if we had to look deep into our eyes and admit what we really feel, if we had to ask ourselves why I am trying to run away from myself, the answer may be frightening, because the answer forces us to change. But perhaps that is exactly what we need to do. Now let's talk about something practical. What actually happens when you stop drinking? Most people only think about the physical effect: improved sleep, more energy, less anxiety. But there is something more, something invisible but completely changing your perception of reality. You start to feel that your mind becomes clearer. You realize that your emotions are no longer so unstable. You start to hear that inner voice that you suppressed for years, and suddenly something strange happens. You realize that I always knew what I had to do. You knew which relationships no longer brought you any benefit. You knew which habits prevented you from living the life you wanted. You knew what needed to be changed, but you just could not act. Now ask yourself, what would happen if you regained that clarity? How many wrong decisions would you avoid? How much time would you save? How much unnecessary pain would you stop carrying? Because the truth is that alcohol has not only stolen your energy, it has stolen time. And time is the only thing we cannot recover. But there is something we can do. And this leads us to the next step. Now that you know all of this, there are only two options before you. First, you can pretend that you have never heard these words and continue to live the same way. Or second, you can acknowledge that there is something inside you that requires change and finally listen to it. What are you going to do with this knowledge? Because now it belongs to you, and what we do with what we know determines the quality of our lives. Therefore, I ask you, if you could regain that clarity of mind, the strength to make conscious decisions again, if you could become whole again, now you will have a clear and detailed strategic plan on how to apply all this in your daily life, because awakening does not happen in one moment. From that moment on, it happens with every choice you make. It's funny that when we finally stop to listen, we realize that we have spent our lives running from distractions to distractions, filling ourselves with everything we can, except what we really need. But what if, for a moment, you just stopped? If you took a deep breath and asked yourself, what am I trying to avoid? Maybe it is a memory that still hurts. Maybe it is a dream that you gave up on. Maybe it is just an emptiness that you never knew how to fill. But if there is something you have already understood, it is that escape has never brought peace to anyone, and that in the end the only way out has always been in the same place, inside you. Now is the time to take the first step, not impulsively, not with empty promises or resolutions that fade with time, but with clarity, because the path back to yourself is not a jump into the dark, it is a process, and like any process it requires a plan. So here it is, just read it and feel it. Stage 1. Awakening the body. Before we can heal the mind, we need to strengthen the foundation. The body is the first to suffer from the effects of alcohol. and the last to recover. But here is a detail that no one mentions: your body carries memories. Each recurring habit, each ingested substance, each pattern of behavior leaves a mark. So the first step to recovering your clarity is not eliminating it, but cleansing it. Start with the simple, conscious hydration. Water cleanses not only the body but also the mind. Every day, waking up, drink a glass of water and be aware that you are washing not only your body but also your emotions. Intentional movement, walking, stretching, feel your feet touching the floor. Remember, your body is not made to be trapped. The more you move, the more your energy circulates. Mindfulness nutrition, it is not about radical diets, it is about perception. Pay attention to how your body feels after each meal. Some foods bring weight, others lightness. Learn to recognize the difference, because an intoxicated body will never withstand a free mind. And when the body starts to align, the mind can finally awaken. Stage 2. Content of the mind. The mind is an echo space. It repeats what it has already heard, fixes what you have already experienced, and if we are not careful, it convinces us that we are just our thoughts. But here is the truth: if you can observe a thought, then you are not it. So try the following: Clarity Diary. Take a notebook. Every day, write 3 sentences. First, what I feel now. Second, what my body is trying to tell me. Third, if I had full clarity right now, what would I do? The power of silence. Before picking up your mobile phone in the morning, close your eyes for 2 minutes. Just observe. Your first thought of the day is a reflection of what your mind has prioritized. Rewriting words. Every day, say about yourself: my mind has awakened, my body is strong, my essence is untouched. It may seem too simple, but words create reality, and when your mind starts to change, your world changes with it. Stage 3. Returning to your essence. Now we have reached the deeper part, because it is not enough to just cleanse your body and tidy up your mind. You need to remember who you are, and for that there is only one way: reconnection. Connection with nature. At least once a week, walk without headphones, listen to the sound of the wind, feel the earth under your feet. Conscious breathing, 3 times a day. Stop and breathe deeply. Fill your lungs, hold your breath for 3 seconds, exhale slowly. The more you are present in the body, the less impulses control you. Take a piece of paper and write down everything that alcohol has taken away from you. It could be time, energy, moments. Then burn that paper, or tear it into small pieces, and remember: I am freeing myself, I am reconnecting.